should start our meeting, and I will call the meeting to order at 6:31 then. Roll call, we're all here. And our first order of business is, you know what I forgot? Bad me. And I forgot that. Somebody put in right after roll call, do an insert. We need to approve the agenda.
Right.
I'm sorry. So
do we want to approve it?
Yes, could we approve the agenda, or are there any amendments to the agenda?
There's one thing I'd like to add, but we can do it along with the board vacancy discussion, or not the board vacancy, the bylaw discussion. Okay. I think we need to take a poll on where people stand on online voting, because the minute that bylaw gets out there, that's going to be a question. Is this just a way to get online voting? So it would be good if we knew where we all were.
Or we can discuss it too by the bylaw amendment drafting, because we're going to talk about that, and that's something we all need to talk about too. Okay, so then if we can fit that sort of stuff in, can we adopt our agenda, please?
Do we need a motion to approve the adopted agenda?
We're small enough that we don't. I just need to make the motion and know if anybody objects. And since you don't, we have adopted our agenda. The next thing we need to do is approve our 4/26 minutes as amended. I think Nancy, because there was some discussion at the board, Nancy decided we would amend our minutes because she had listed some of the major changes that we made. And since it became a topic of discussion, she decided to amend it, because we certainly did discuss it, but it wasn't in her first set of minutes.
So, I just didn't. That went into the amended, or to the new manual in early March, like March 1st. I have some files dated.
I wonder if that's that one. I wonder if it's that one meeting where I kept going away.
I don't know. What happened was it was mixed up with the word kept overwriting.
Okay. I got you.
So I can't even tell who put it in, but I'm betting it wasn't Michael or Steve, because it probably
I got you.
It wasn't on either radar, and so it really doesn't matter. But it's been in there from the beginning, and I never thought of it as a change because it was what we were doing anyway.
Yeah.
But it needs to be in there because. It's new wording, I guess, is the better way than change.
Yep.
Anybody unhappy?
Does anybody have any objections to approving these minutes as amended? I hear no objections. So then by acclamation, those minutes are approved.
They are no longer draft.
I know, take draft off there and send it to me again, and then I'll send it into the office. They've been really good. I think we're doing better than a lot of people with their minutes. Don't tell anybody.
Well, minutes are something best served hot, because if you let it, your mind go cold, you forget.
Yeah, I hear you. I know even now when I read board minutes, I'll go, wait a minute, did we do that? It's like trying to remember exactly if that's exactly how it went. So number 4 is the entity manual status. And because Nancy posted what she did about what AJ actually said at the meeting, That's in the minutes of the meeting recorded correctly, but it presents a real problem. Because he specified, Nancy, what did you write exactly? I wrote it down here somewhere.
Yeah, I'm looking for where I put it. I'm pretty sure I copied it. I
What
know.
he actually, I have it, what he actually said was approve the updated N&E manual as presented with one correction to change end of business day to 2 p.m. for the closing of accepting applications for board positions.
Yeah.
That creates a problem because it needs to say that accepting applications for AGM candidates. Because we've got ACC candidates and we have N&E candidates, not just board candidates.
Well, I think what he wants is not what they want, is not to have two different application deadlines for AGM. We don't want to have an end of workday and a 2 p.m. for the board.
Yeah.
They need to be the same deadline.
Yeah,
Are we all agree?
Well, but the manual just has all applications have to be in on that deadline and instead of saying end of day, and we all know why we went through that because of the hours that the office is open now. We don't know when they're going back to regular hours, if those are still going to be 4:30 in the afternoon. You know, I'm assuming they will go back to between 9 and 4:30. Rachel's got her hand up.
Sorry. So I did actually talk to Glenn about this, and right now we're not changing the hours. So to be on the safe side, I would, if you wanted to go with 4, you know that it's going to be open no matter what.
I think what AJ discussed at the meeting, and I know you were there for part of it, is instead of waiting until the end of the day and when staff is getting ready to go home and we simply make the deadline at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. I said 3:30, but he said 2 p.m. and it was what they did at work. What the problem is, and I think I can have them just amend it by amending the minutes that we get a copy of, is just to say before the closing of accepting applications for AGM candidates. Otherwise, you're separating the board from ACC and the N&E.
I don't read it that way at all for the AGM. I do for applications for open seats. And I think the board, well, I'm sure the board wanted the applications for an open seat on the board and the application for the
Just a minute.
AGM election at the same time. And that, because that's how this
Nancy, I don't know if you heard Linda, but she asked for just a moment because it sounded like her
I'm
phone-
coming. My phone was ringing and I had to make it go away.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
I was going to read the motion. AJ, I make a motion to approve updated N&E manual as presented in the agenda packet with one correction, to change end of business day to 2 p.m. as the time for closing of accepting applications for board positions. It doesn't say just elected or appointed. It says board positions. And to me, that's both. Plus, when they talked, they were real emphatic about that 2 p.m. Did anybody else listen to the tape? Or
No, I get the 2 p.m., Nancy. What I'm concerned with is when we take applications, and this is the elections manual, and this is what we need to remember. And it's kind of another discussion we're going to have later on in the meeting, is you have board vacancies, you have N&E vacancies, and you have ACC vacancies. And with what AJ said, that only applies to board vacancies. But as you point out, we should ask them to change that to, what do you want to say? You had
I
some
don't
language.
want it to be for all vacancies. I just want the 2 p.m. for the board positions and everybody for the AGM positions. No,
No,
I'm not making myself clear then. Because what our bylaw, what our N&E manual actually says is open positions, let's see, discusses the deadline for the August edition of the Views. The chair will submit an article to the Views editor announcing board N&E and ACC openings. The article will include the solicitation of candidates for open positions on the board N&E and ACC. The article will provide deadlines for applying for the positions, as well as the deadline for submitting an application. The deadline to submit applications to the administration office is the Tuesday after Labor Day. That puts it at the AGM. We can't say that includes open seats due to somebody quitting or whatever before their term ends.
but, and that's why I think we're trying to mix something we shouldn't be mixing, and we're kind of doing a back and forth. I'm saying that, and you read it yourself, that there's open seats for the board, the ACC, and the N&E for the AGM. So if you just have what AJ said, you're limiting that to only the board candidates. You're not saying anything about the candidacy for the ACC applications or the N&E applications. Because not all of those are board of directors vacancies.
Well, if you look at how this thing is written, you go through all the deadline to submit is Tuesday after Labor Day. And then what I want to say is board appointment forms for open seats will also be due by 2 p.m. And that separates it from the elected board positions and the N&E and ACC.
See, and that's the problem. And we should simply go back to saying that 2 p.m. is the deadline for everybody, rather than separating out board candidates. I think that you're gonna, and this is an elections manual, and it starts out by saying that it is an elections manual.
Yes,
And we're trying to put something in that has nothing in it. And I really do think we need to do a separate policy. I know AJ's kind of against that, but we've got all sorts of policies all over the place.
And so is the rest of the board against doing it that. And if we're going to make it elections only, we need to get and appointments out of that section of section 1.2 of the manual, where it says elected and appointed. That has to come out. Because if we're not going to do appointed at all, and we have to do a separate thing, we don't need that word in, those two words.
You know, if you go back to the whole preface of the manual, it talks about it being an elections manual. And I worry because there's so many differences between the board appointing for a vacancy and this process.
Steve
I-
has something
Go
exciting
ahead.
to say, I'm sure.
Go ahead, Steve.
I'm not sure how exciting it is, but I mean, this is, again, it's the elections manual. Like, do we have a nominations manual? I mean, we're the nominations
No.
and elections committee.
And Nancy wrote a good article. That's the whole thing that's scary. And I think the reason N&E got kind of put in the middle of all this is I think sometimes when they used to have vacancies, one person would apply, and if they liked that person, they were and then they changed it to say you have to have at least two.
For the board, only
For
the board.
Yeah, the board vacancy. And that's the only thing that's the only place that's covered for any of the elected committees is for the board of directors. And I think because there's been favoritism in the past. Do I know that? I'm just saying there has to be a reason, because that was modified a few years back to say that you needed one more candidate than the vacancy. You know, there was one year when we had two directors resign at the same time. So then you had to have at least 3 applications.
Yeah, I understand that, Linda, but we've got a choice. If we're not going to do any appointments at all, it needs to come out of the list of responsibilities of the election manual.
I think the only thing it says is that I think there's only one thing in there now, and that's in that first section that you pointed out.
It's 1.2 is a number. And the board has already approved that, so we need to tell them it's.
But that's just us advertising. That's just us advertising.
The only thing we're authorized to advertise is that board seat. We're not authorized to advertise the others. And
Well,
there is no deadline for their applications. If you read the application for ACC, N&E, and all the other committees, there's no deadline.
Oh,
It's
I
a
understand,
computer thing.
and that's kind of why it's not in the bylaws.
That's right.
It's like this no man's land. We're out in the middle of the desert. And I think for us to try and squeeze it in to the elections manual isn't exactly the way to do it, because it's confusing. What
We
I
only
want,
are only
Yeah.
the one thing, the board is all we're squeezing in. We're not touching N&E or any other committees, just the deadline for board applications.
but so then all right, Nancy, we'll do that. So then when we send out these letters that you have copies of, we're going to have to make different applications for ACC, N&E, and the board, because the board's the only one that has to have theirs in by 2. I can still say end of day
Well, you don't send out
for
application
ACC
letters,
and
Linda.
N&E.
Not for the other ones, not for an open seat. You do for an elected seat, but not for an open seat.
But AJ, how do I say it? He doesn't specify that for an elected seat. It's just board candidates. I'm telling you, it's too restrictive, because it should be for any of the candidates. Otherwise, you're going to have staff up in the office having to ask somebody on that last day. If you leave it the way AJ wrote it, you're going to have to know if they're submitting an ACC application or an N&E application or a board application, because he only talks about board candidates.
Okay, I think the way to solve this is just go back to the board, do nothing now. Go back to the board and say, okay, what do you want? Because I have an idea what they clearly want and it's different. So
I don't
let
know.
the board tell us.
I don't mind doing 2 PM, Nancy. It has to be for all the candidates.
Yeah,
Not just
All
the
the
board.
AGM candidates. Yes, that's what
Yes.
it is. All
And-
of the AGM candidates.
Yes, and we're looking at the AGM election manual. So it has to be just the AGM candidates. It can't say board candidates. Otherwise, you're saying, okay, the board, we can put that in there, but then that means just they have to have their applications in by 2 PM that day. And then you're going to have staff ask people on that last day, just when people bring stuff in on the last day. Once you get past the 2 PM deadline, then they're going to have to ask, is this a board application? Because if it is, I can't accept it.
Now, we're talking in circles, Linda. For the AGM, they all are due at 2. And the way to do that is to have some sort of time date stamp punch where
Yeah.
if they get an application addressed to N&E, punch it and put it down. That way, nobody but staff has to be there. And we get rid of this idea that if you can hand it to a staff person, it's accepted. Because really, that's how this reads, that if it's accepted by a staff in administration, they're candidates. And that's not the case. If you stamp it, well, that's why I added the bit about the accepted by N&E to separate it from being accepted by staff. We don't want them, and they don't want to be
I
responsible
understand
for
that. I
this stuff.
understand that, but I'm saying the way that it's written now, that AJ explained it, it's only accepting the applications for board positions. Because the candidates that you have for the AGM, Nancy, are for ACC and N&E. And none of them may be on the board.
I think we need to go back to the board because this just isn't working. We've spent
Yeah.
a bunch of time chasing our tails, and that just, it gets my cats nowhere. It's getting us nowhere.
I agree with you completely. You know, when you pointed that out, because I went back and listened to it, and right before AJ made his motion, he talked to everybody and he said, so we're going to make 2 PM the deadline for applications. And I'm like, yeah, I'm okay with that. I have no problem. And then he said what he said, and that's different. Then he separated out the board applicant, you know what I mean, the director application, and we just can't do that. And I might be able to just, at the meeting on Thursday night, I will try seeing if they will amend the minutes to include just board, candidates for the AGM. Because that's
Okay,
all
they don't need to,
for.
they need a new motion. And the new motion will have to carry by 2/3, but I don't think that's going to be a problem.
You know,
Because the meeting has already, that you made the original motion at,
yeah.
is already closed.
So
So you
then we're
can't-
gonna, okay, so then we're gonna look for in June, we're going to bring back the motion about application deadlines.
We're going to bring back the manual. because the manual isn't really approved until that's fixed. And
No,
we don't
they said
know how
that,
to fix it, because we don't know what it means, so we need to get
that's
that.
true, but I'm saying if you, his whole thing said only one correction.
I
That
know,
he accepted the manual as presented with only one correction.
that's right. And then he says that bit about board positions. Oh,
Yes, yes.
So that's, whoops, my computer just turned itself off.
I will try and put something together then for June. I think, given where we go with seeing where that goes, number 5 on our agenda is the board vacancy discussion. And I think we simply wait until this in June is resolved by the board.
Okay, let's talk about the election manual. We can't even go forward with that. Because we don't know what it says. We don't know what that 2 p.m.
So
applies to.
Go ahead, Steve. Go
there's a
ahead,
whole bunch of
Steve.
us just talking in circles here. We're not moving forward, is what it feels
know.
like. And when the position was first put forth saying we need to go to 2:00, the majority of us are saying, yes, we should do that for everybody. There's nothing that's actually saying, from what I'm hearing back and forth, that we can't just do that.
Because of what AJ said and what the actual motion said. That's what's troubling, where he limited it to board candidates.
So the motion he's putting forth is he wants at 2:00 for board
Yes.
candidates to have it in by. He didn't say you cannot make the other ones be at 2:00. So I propose we just change it to 2:00 for everybody and move forward.
So it just reads, deadline to submit applications to the admin office is Tuesday after Labor Day by 2 p.m.
Yes.
Otherwise, you don't want it to say at. They all line up.
Because otherwise you're going to, again, have that problem with the office being like, well, which one is this? Do I have to get into a conflict over the whole thing? If it's across the board for everybody and equal, then that's the best way to move forward, especially since, that's what all of us want to make sure these elections are.
And
as
it's
fair and
even
equal
what
as
the
possible.
board said before, that the board kind of voted on and agreed on before AJ made the motion. It's just
So, I
kind
mean,
of a
even with us
bizarre-
changing it to everyone being at 2, we're still honoring exactly what AJ said by making the board at 2. I mean, I know I'm getting down into the semantics here, but it's correct.
Yeah.
I mean, unless I'm wrong, I mean, I'm happy to remove it. I've got it in there as an edit mode. I can just hit save and change it, but
It just needs to say that everybody needs to have their applications in by 2 p.m.
which is what it says.
Okay. And that's all we need. If you would be, go ahead,
Dawn.
Nancy.
So do we want to say anything about board appointment forms or just blow that one off? I was trying to get something in there so we wouldn't have to go back and do this again.
I think the thing that's confusing, and I guess it's because I've done it as long as I have, and maybe I'm stuck in my ways. This is an elections manual that is for the elections at the AGM. There is nothing beyond the bylaws about how the board fills a vacancy. There are differences as far as responsibilities go for the N&E that are different than the AGM and doing the whole election thing during the AGM. When we fill a vacancy for the board, you have to have at least 2. You have to open it in theory. The first time it has to be open for at least 30 days. AJ, with this last vacancy, extended it to more than the 30 days. If you don't have 2 people, at the end of those 30 days, you come back to the board at the board meeting and say, you know, we only have one candidate or we have no candidates. At that point in time, the board is obligated to open a second application period for 30 days or whatever, because they're supposed to try and fill the vacancy within 60 days. Correct, Nancy?
Yeah, that's all in the bylaws. We
Yeah.
don't need to cover that. It's done and we can't change it. So don't say anything about that kind of
No,
timing.
I'm not going
The
to.
only thing we can say something about is when during the day, the last day, that board appointment application comes in. And that's just strictly board. There are no rules for the other committees. There's a nice little form online
Yep.
that you type up that has no deadline
Yep.
at all.
You know, and most of those can even be applications that are applied for online, where even if you apply for a board vacancy, you have to go through the whole 9 yards of filling out all that enhanced application.
Yeah, we know that.
Oh, I
but
know.
we don't for anything else.
Nancy, what my whole point is with the AGM, if we don't get any board applicants, doesn't make any difference, does it? You just simply say, I have no applicants. How many times has N&E or ACC been empty? You know, there have been times during the election they are, and that's what I'm trying to say with the vacancy, you're obligated, the N&E is obligated to keep going with advertising until we have.
That's not, I mean, Linda, I don't see how that fits into this discussion and we're tail chasing again. What do we want to do? I mean, Steve, Michael, Lori, what do you want to do?
So
You're a majority if all three of you want to do the same thing.
just to clarify, we are currently on step 5 of our agenda, the board vacancy discussion. Is that where we're at
Yes.
right now?
Yep.
No, we're on the N&E manual.
Oh, you're going to go
We
back to
haven't
the
finished
manual.
that
Okay.
yet.
Okay,
Then
I
you
thought
Go ahead,
that-
Steve.
the manual was addressed. We all agreed that we were going to go to 2 p.m. for everybody.
Okay,
Is that-
that's
am
the.
I right? Thumbs up?
We're gonna
Down?
do. Okay,
Okay.
2 p.m. for everybody, and we're going to take out any mention of board appointment forms for open seats. We'll also be doing 2 p.m.
See, we're mixing and matching,
That's right.
you know, but this is an elections manual.
So Nancy, I'd like for us to table that part until after the board vacancy discussion, because I think that discussion is going to determine what we're going to do going forward.
Okay,
I mean, we're really trying to, again, we're working with the elections manual. It feels like we're trying to shoehorn it in, which to me doesn't feel right, but we can discuss that when we move to step 5.
okay. I had stuck in will not be accepted by N&E, but that really doesn't need to be there. That's because I think people are getting this idea if they can stick it somehow in that admin office, it counts, and that's something that has to be discouraged.
And one of the things, yeah, I hear what you're saying. And you know, it's why I agree with you, but I really do think that somehow we have to keep that vacancy business separate from the elections manual. It's 2 different things.
Let's go. Do we take the words "and appointed" out of the things that,
It's just for advertising. I have no problem with that. That's just advertising.
because this is the first time it's ever been in there.
Yeah,
If
no,
you want to take
I
it out,
agree.
we can take it out.
I mean, again, this is the elections manual, and appointed positions are not elections, so it shouldn't be in there, in my opinion.
Okay, I could go either way. It just means one word. How hard is that? It won't even mess up the line spacing.
No, it won't.
Just highlight and hit delete. It's easy. I can do it right now, but I want to make sure everyone's on board with it before I try.
Well, we have to do something say something to the board because they actually approved it with that in it, whether they knew it or not.
So we wanted to say prepares communications to advertise open elected positions and submits that to the communication and staff for posting.
And that's what it was originally.
So we'll take it out. You know, we did a summary of the changes, Nancy, and I can do that when it goes back because it's just going to go back for board signatures. And if they say, I don't want to do it, then we start all over again. I can go with we can go with the NNE manual the way it currently sits without any of the edits. You know, but then if you're saying that that's it, then do we all agree that we're going to take out that sentence that so it only reads prepares communications to advertise open elected positions and submits that to the communications committee and staff for posting. Correct?
Yeah, that's what we need to do.
No, just a minute. I'm writing something. So if anybody wants to talk, have at it.
As long as we have a consensus, I'll hit that delete button right now. Unless people want to add more to it.
Consensus. Michael, what's your thoughts? Lori? Okay, so appointed are going to come out.
Appointed is gone. Sorry, technically, and appointed is gone.
Yes.
Because it was 2 words and a
Yes.
space. 2 spaces, technically.
You know, I know, Nancy, right now, all of us that are sitting in this meeting understand the board vacancy process.
Mhm.
I just worry that there'll be a time when there may be 5 new people in here and a different board trying to figure out what the hell, what do we do? And this is such a good process of what N&E does. And I just wish we had another one sheet that explains that for a board vacancy. Go ahead,
Right.
Steve.
And
So,
present to the
are we-
board of the policy.
Are we moving to the step 5 now to discuss the board vacancy position?
Yes.
Because if that's the case, I have a proposal I want to throw right out of the beginning.
Okay, shoot.
We should write a 1-page document discussing everything that we talked about, what needs to be done for appointments. Because again, we don't have a document for it, and we need that because at some point, not all of us are going to be on this committee anymore, and the future needs to know.
So what do? We can't write a policy. The board writes policy.
Well,
Go take a look. Go look at all the policies that are in our policies. There's some for the finance, for financial. There's some, I don't know that they're all board, but we can go look.
Well, I mean, what was just listed off, you have to have at least 2, you have to be 30 days. This information is somewhere. We're not writing these policies that already exist. We're simply documenting what's there.
How do I say it? It's in the bylaws about needing 30 days that the board endeavors to fill the vacancy within 60 days. Speaking as someone who's been there, I've gone with open 30-day periods to where I believe it was last year, I was up against having applications for board candidates for the AGM and still having it open for people to apply to. I think we did our last application appointment to the board in August last year.
We absolutely did. I was one of them.
See, and that's why,
But-
Nancy, I think it's important. And I think Steve kind of understands that. It's like, once you've been part of it, you kind of know all the pitfalls.
I was trying to get something in fast
Yeah.
that would be useful. Not thorough, just a little bit more that will stop the normal or will sidetrack these late application acceptances. Because every time that happens, people are upset, and rightfully so.
Well,
So if we can get something in there that emphasizes, don't do that. The deadline is the deadline. I think we'd all be happier. I mean, I would prefer not to have to make arbitrary decisions.
Yeah.
And that's why I was trying to get something in there.
go ahead, Lori.
So can you hear me?
A little louder.
Okay, so you're saying to do this one-page document to eliminate confusion, that you can do as per bylaw, blah, 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 and then say this, and then as per blah, 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 say that, and then that way it's all statement of fact and you have the bylaws to back it up. Does that make sense?
And to piggyback on that, we could even, with like the deadline of 2:00, we could even say something along the lines of, per the NNE elections manual, applications must be in by 2 p.m. So we're still backing up with everything and all the policies that already exist. We're just documenting it so it's a one-stop shop.
And it'll be a standalone document for board appointments. Yeah, that'll work.
I think when we all talk about it, it's so fresh in our minds right now. But but 2 or 3 years down the road, we might not be here the way people are selling houses here right now. My goodness, or maybe we all plan on.
I mean, if we're talking about 2 or 3 years down the road, I'm sorry for cutting you off, Linda, but when we're talking about 2 or 3 years down the road, we have to trust that committee is also going to be, wanting to take care of fair elections and wanting to make sure these things happen. And they'll be looking at this document, just like, when we are looking at the current document, we're updating it to what we understand the current situation to be. So if we have that there, it's something that they'll be able to move forward with as well. We just have to trust that the future is going to be trying to look out for ourselves as well.
And I think that's important for the board to know too. Michael, did you have your hand raised? No, okay. I just, it's so easy to it's easy to assume people know it, but it's just never always that easy. I know that sounds really corny, but I've found that out with being around as long as I have. It's why, and I think we all see it, that a third-party vendor, whether we stay paper forever, is the way to go. That you have this, when it comes to the ballots and counting them and making sure that, we still have to vet them and we still have to register them as the NNE committee. But when it comes to dealing with those ballots, there's not any question about, we've got a third party that's got no skin in the game and does an excellent job of reporting. And I think it's the way the Valley needs to go forward. It takes away one of the bones of contention of how things are done.
Okay, so on the board vacancy, who's going to write it? We've said we should have someone write it.
I'll be happy to start a draft for you all to add to. I was going to ask a favor of Stephen with some of this other stuff we have too. I know Rachel was good enough to do our manual, but do we want to do, I know if you have Google Docs, you can take a document that we've started with and then just let us all work on it. Would you be willing to do that?
I am willing to, however, I don't think that I should. And the reason why I say that is, I think Rachel should create it because it's a Sudden Valley document. It's not my document. So I want to make sure that a Sudden Valley staff member has that, and then we're editing on their document.
So I can send her a draft and then we all can work on it?
Yeah.
Because it really should come out of N&E.
And again, it will definitely come out of N&E. It's just I want to make sure that, Rachel is, the staff member that has it, and then she can do whatever she needs to on their end to make sure.
Gotcha, especially if the finished product goes in the board policy, in the policy section of the, gotcha. You're right, Steve. Do you have something, Rachel, you want to share with us?
Oh, no, I was just dumping my iPad over. Don't worry.
No, okay, no.
So if you send me the draft, then I can send it out to all of you guys again and give you editing privileges, just like we did before.
Okay, I think that we're gonna, in the manual, we've decided how we're gonna get around AJ's comment. And I think, we have one change we need to make, but I know that AJ wanted it to come back to be signed, a finalized copy. And I have that, but we made one change that the board should know about. And I know we still have that Google Doc.
We have to tell them we took out and appointed, and that's the one change you're getting to?
Yes, that's the one I'm talking about.
Okay.
Yep. And it's just before because the board said to give them a clean copy. And it's like, we can, right now, if Steve took that out, the Google Doc has that out of there. I just need to be able to share a summary like you did of, we made one change here.
I also made the edits to removing the blank line above 0.3, and then the 4.1.5 and 4.1.6 still go until page 9, and then the next one starts on 10. So the spacing all worked out perfectly fine.
Cool,
So it should be good to go.
good.
I only found one place to put 2 p.m. in, and that was in 4.1.5. Did anybody find more?
I don't think so. Steve's really good at finding that in Google Docs. I'm still every now and then struggling. Sometimes I can do Google Docs just fine. And other times.
So yeah, I went into Google Doc when we were first talking about this. I did a Control F, which is to find within a document. I typed in end of business. There's only one instance of that within the document, which we just updated to read 2 p.m. 2:00 space p.m.
Gotcha.
instead of end of business.
That's all we need. So the next person who's going to tell us all about things is, we're done with board vacancy. I'll start a draft. I'll send it to Rachel, and we'll, the board can just say, no, we're not going to do this. Hopefully I can explain myself enough. And I think it's important that there is a process there rather than trying to make a bylaw change.
And our whole goal for that document is not to change any bylaws. It's to just reflect all of it in one spot, so it's visible and consistent with the existing election process.
Yep. Okay, Steve, you're up for number 6, translation option and plain language use discussion.
So when it comes to the plain language use, we've done a pretty good job throughout the document of going through and cleaning it up already. We don't have a lot of say within the other policies and such. Like, we can't rewrite the bylaws to be in the legalese and the plain language. So I think that part is already resolved.
Okay.
I'm not seeing a whole bunch of issues anywhere, or any issues that I could come across when through our process so far. We definitely, when we write this new document, want to make sure that it's as easy to understand in plain language as possible.
Yep.
When it comes to translation option, I was really hoping to get some more census data and that it would be published so I could actually look and see what the language spread is within the valley. Unfortunately, I don't have any of that information yet. I still have it based off of the previous census of 10 years ago. And the complexion of our valley has changed in that time.
Oh, yeah.
As it does. So I don't really know what languages we could look at trying to support with a translation option, but I definitely would like for us to, I guess, petition the board so that we can create a website where we offer alternative languages for the documentation. Even if we can just simply add a link on the official ballot saying, go here for languages. I don't really know what else to say other than that. Like it's kind of my hope, because we have had people in the community who've come forth who do speak Spanish that want more accessibility, and it's not there.
I think Nancy, I think you were there. There was a meeting of the board and it was combined earlier in the year, and we had people call in, and there was a gentleman who definitely, like you said, speak Spanish, and it was kind of hard for them to understand him. But then his wife got on and assisted him. But definitely we need to look at this. And I believe in our last strategic planning meeting, somebody brought up the whole thing of realizing our diversity and looking at translation at times so people understand stuff, even if it's just the voting booklet. I don't know how you do a ballot. I'd maybe have to ask Unilect if there's a way they could do, if we could just put up I don't know that you can print them in both, but is there a way that we could at least show people what that looks like online for them to then vote their ballot? Am I making any sense? Tell me if I'm way overboard.
Like looking at the Washington State Voters Guide, right? Like they have it available in multiple different ones, and every header within the ballots, you've got initiative 151 or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And then you could have a website that lists out initiative 151, has it in English and in Spanish. And so, we could have a link. Again, I've never done any of this stuff. I speak English and that's it. I read English. I have not been blessed with having the ability to learn another language, unfortunately. But there are people here who are multilingual, and I want to make sure that we're giving them an option to have a fair voice.
Gotcha. Well, I'll follow up with maybe with Josh about this, because I know it was brought up during this last meeting that we had about making sure that we're getting information out to the community. So definitely we could be, I'll ask him about that a little bit, because I know somebody brought it up. I don't remember who, but I probably can go back because it's online and see. It was when we were all sharing our thoughts under different ways that we could improve things in the community.
Looks like Michael has a comment too.
Go ahead, Michael.
There are apps that you can take any document and translate it on the app to just about any language that you want. Mostly Spanish is the easiest one. So if a person needed that information, all you'd have to do is make available that link to the app. Because I have a friend that he enjoys bugging me in Spanish because he knows I don't understand it very well. But I found the app and I can converse back with him, and he's going, wow, you're really learning the language. And I'm not. But there is an app, that does that automatically for you.
Could you maybe send that in an email to all of us, Michael, if you get a chance?
Yeah, it's you have to find it. It's really easy. It's just a link and it says translate, and bam, it does it.
Just take a chance, because that way we could play with it a little bit on our own at home.
Yeah, I know that, like, for example, Google Translate offers that, and it's really, really handy with it. But the downside and the concern I have with using Google Translate for that is we're talking about policy bylaws, which are going to be legal binding bylaws.
Yeah,
So we don't want someone necessarily using Google Translate where it accidentally translates the wrong word. So they may think that they're voting yes on a thing when they're actually voting no on a thing. So
gotcha.
I'm not saying Google Translate isn't a good place to start, but if we, I don't know if we would, try and need to get volunteer from the community, but at the same time, I don't know if they're, well versed legally enough to be able to put that forth, or if we need to, pursue legal translation services. Because I mean that's out there.
Yep.
But I don't know what the cost is. I mean, I definitely wouldn't want to go to like Fiverr, and I mean that's where you can pay $5 to get people to do basically anything. Translation, you can get art drawn, just $5. But at the same time, I'm not sure I'd trust that for a legal process.
Okay. Well, it's something to look into, and if Michael sends us the app, it's something to look at, especially if we're, like Michael talked about, NNE having their own page where you can go on to our section of the webpage, our committee thing, and have information there rather than everybody just posting online.
And when you're working in a I'm trying to figure out how to say this. People say I'm gruff. Let's see. When working in an area of legalities, one can't just take a general summation of a translation for it anyway. I mean, if they have real authentic questions, they should ask somebody to translate it that is a good translator and have it done. But what we're doing here isn't rocket science. It's, do you want to have your dues raised? Do you want this person to be elected? It's fairly simple, what we're doing. So we're not binding them with a legal contract of any deep nature. So,
but it's something to look at, and it's possible that Joshua has already looked into the legalities of translation. I don't know, but I can certainly ask him that question in an email. And just, I remember it came up, and I thought that it was kind of neat that this idea is floating around out there in the community amongst others that are having that thought that maybe we need to work at this, and that's good, that it's not just us. So I'll try and talk to Josh before our next meeting and get some feedback on to legalities, if they've looked at it, about translating our stuff so that people get the information, that sort of thing. But I'll ask him about that.
Also, I just want to throw out there, for the record, Michael, you did not come across gruff to me in any manner whatsoever there. That was very well put.
So number 7, Nancy was saying what I sent, she couldn't read. And it's because I added that whole part, and what I'd like to do. And I guess since Steve raised this question before, there's also the the 2021 draft application documents. And we definitely need to make changes to those. Do we want to turn those into Google documents too? Otherwise, I was going to ask Steve to do that, or should I be asking Rachel and just send her a bunch of different things we'd like to work on?
That is my opinion. Give them to Rachel and have her post them, and then we can edit them in real time and deal with it.
Oh, thank you, Michael. So we're by that. So the bylaw amendment drafting. Nancy, I don't know if you want to try and work on this tonight on, I see you had it all. It was just, I kind of put the changes, I put it up a little higher because the explanations were so long that you
I
have.
just used the order of the template
Yeah, I
that
know.
we had,
I
which
know.
put the technical language last. And
Yep.
we can change the explanation if somebody doesn't like it. You're not fixed on that. So,
Yeah,
or wants to add, or, I mean,
do you have it, you had sent it in, how do I say it? You'd sent it out as a PDF. Can you send that in some sort of Word document and I can give that to Rachel too? And then
Yeah.
she will have all the documents that she needs to let us play with. And then she'll end up with a solid document at the end that is final, which they should have.
I didn't understand what you said.
That if we give her the bylaw update that we want to do, if we give her the draft candidate 2021 application documents, that'll be on file with staff then too, because I already have those in Word format.
Right.
And if she transfers them into Google Docs, she'll have that document too. Or do you want to keep some of this stuff that's kind of our purview? Because there are documents, N&Es.
What, you mean, and not put them up on Google Docs?
No, how do I say this? It's whoever ends up saving it and having access. That's one thing I'd like to ask Steve about with Google Docs is when you get done editing, how do you end up with a final copy so that Nancy can have one? Oh, you save, don't you?
It auto saves as you type.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can go up and hit file and hit save.
And I'm
You just
not
need
going to worry about you anymore. That's what we're going to do. All done.
Yeah, I mean, technically speaking, right now with that link, we all 5 of us or 6 of us have access to the final version at this moment.
Yep. So that's a good thing. The only thing that I'd like to try and do is, now that we know what we're doing, if you look at the letter to the applicants, where it says, thank you for picking up an application, we need to change that to 2 p.m. It says 4:30. I think I highlighted it and it should be highlighted on your copy. One of the things in that letter, in the 4th paragraph, it says candidates for a position on the SVCA board, the Architectural Control Committee, or the Nominations and Elections Committee are required to be members in good standing from the time of application through their term of office if elected. Do we want to add to that section the whole thing the attorney said about if you plan on being a candidate for any or be on any committee, that your name should be on the deed? Because that's one thing that a few years ago when he wrote that opinion, there were 2 candidates that had to go down and do an amendment to their deeds to have them added to the deeds in order for them to be candidates.
I think you need to have that, because not everybody is so fastidious that has both spouses on the deed all the time.
You know,
and this is like, in a way, like a proxy on a stock thing. You have to be an owner of record.
Yes.
Which reminds me, we didn't ask yet how we stand on online voting.
How we stand on online voting.
Yeah, because
I think the board likes that idea. They gave us permission and I asked if we could submit something. They would still have to vote on our bylaw amendment. It looks like from their schedule, and I have only seen one, I have only seen it in the finance committee, it looks like around the end of July, there's a board meeting where it's, just a minute, let me make sure that's really a board meeting. On the 22nd of July, which is really a standard board meeting, they're going to do the AGM agenda, the measures, the ballot and explanations, and that's where I guess any bylaw changes would need to be brought forward and approved.
Yeah, I think I'm making a motion that we take a quick vote, yes or no, do you favor online voting?
Before can we define online voting before we make this motion?
Oh, certainly.
'Cause-
Voting with no paper ballot. You log on, you have a little code that you put in, and you fill out your ballot online. You can save your screen or print your screen, but no paper ballots exist. It's all computerized. Have you ever voted in a proxy for stock? It's like that.
I have not. That's why I asked for it to be defined so I could understand exactly what we're trying to vote on, because I don't want to say yes or no, not understanding what the question is.
Yeah, the issue is there are no paper ballots. So if there's any sort of a recount problem, I don't know how you do it.
You don't.
I'd like to modify that. There's no way in Sudden Valley it's going to be all online. You're going to always have, just for instance, when I have my annuity, and as you say, because I have an annuity, I have a share and I vote my share, they send me a packet and it tells me, gives me the candidates for office, tells me anything else they're going to vote on. It sends me a paper ballot, and it also sends me instructions to vote online. And I don't think there's any way, I think if we go strictly online and nothing else, that you will disenfranchise a portion of our community. But I think that a third party online option should be there. Unilect has it. There's another company here in Washington State that does. When we looked at online at first last year, the one company showed us there's kind of a way to look at ballots, sort of like right now with Unilect, there's a process, and I can't even explain it to you. I can show you where we looked at them, but it's like every single one of the little ballots that were voted come up on their screen, and they're teeny tiny, but they're either green because they're happy little votes, or they're a vote that has a problem. And there's like a yellow, an orange, and a red. And you have to go through, and you have at least two members, and it usually works best with two members of the entity look, and they look at how the ballot was voted. They try and determine how it was supposed to be, can you determine what this person meant? And then you clean go ahead, Steve.
We're talking about paper ballots now, not online voting.
I know, but I think that there's a way that online voting can be done the same way, because I think when you vote online and you get your ballot, and it explains how to do it online. You go on there and you vote. And I think that there's a way that they track the magic number they give you to that ballot, that if there's a question, they can check back on it.
But if that exists, then that removes the whole like separating out the ballots. We know exactly who is on which ballot at all times, right? So that
And
removes
that-
anonymity.
That you'd have to ask more again if we get this approved. It's something you're going to have to look into again. It's
Realize that. That's why I want to know what we all think about online voting and not having paper ballots. I mean,
Then I'm
recounts
a
and
no.
all that are a hot topic right now.
What do I say? You can vote that way. I think I'd like to see a vote then for a hybrid where those who want to vote online may, like you say, with shareholders, or those who want to do a paper ballot, do a paper ballot.
Are you amending my motion?
No, what I'd like to do is if you want to find out online only, then I want us to vote on that. But then I'd also like us to take a second vote on a hybrid election where people who
Okay.
want to use.
There's a motion on the floor.
Okay.
Let's vote on online only, and then we'll go to the next motion.
Okay,
So do you want me to repeat it, or do you want to?
no, you
The
go
motion.
ahead.
Okay. I move we take an up or down vote. Do you support online only voting, no paper ballots? Do you support it? Your vote is yes. If you don't support it, your vote is no. I'm a no. Okay, we're all don't want to do that. Online only.
Then I would like to make a motion that how many people are in favor of a hybrid election where you have paper ballots, but you also have the option of voting online if you wish. Well, so we're gonna go that I'm the only person in favor and you are all against. So we're gonna stick with paper only. Do we want to take a vote on that? Then paper only ballots, okay. So I've got 4 and then 1. Because I don't mind doing that. I think that for the younger people in our community, they want to do that. So then the question is, if you all feel that you really don't want to do online voting, never mind. I was going to say, then we don't have to do our bylaw change, but that has to do with budget only. Never mind. That's why I said, never mind. The brain is going. You know, I think that the board, it's like last year they were split about 50-50. And I think probably if we asked the board again, you'd maybe find them that way too. I think enough of us, I don't know if any of you have, but I've done a lot of my voting online for my annuity and the different elections and stuff they have, and I don't have any trouble with it. I know at one time Sudden Valley looked at buying software and letting us do it ourselves, and then we're back to the same problem with who counts the ballots.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That is a problem.
Plus, when you have software, and that's what's really scary and why I like the way Unilect does their elections by not opening the ballots, is when you vote online, most of these will give you, they can give you a readout of what's passing, what's failing, who's got the most votes, who's got the less votes. And it's like, when we first looked at that, I'm like, I did a Macaulay Culkin. It's just, yeah.
I mean, at some point in the future, my opinion on it can definitely change. But I mean, my job is I work with a cloud-based software company. And I know that, you've got to do these things encrypted. You have to have stuff encrypted at rest. And, depending on the anonymous nature of the ballot, which we have currently,
Mhm.
if they actually can trace it back and figure out who's going where, that's great. But then that removes once it's been counted.
Yeah.
And so like we could lose a paper trail, or lose, the secrecy envelope is gone. So, I mean, that's until the technology overcomes those two things. I'm a no.
Just so you all know and you all understand, and I think you already do, when Unilect sends out ballots in their envelope, each one of their envelopes has a unique number, but only the envelope, not the ballot. And it's so that you can check and make sure this is a real person, that this envelope came from Unilect, that it went to a Sudden Valley resident, that it's not forged in any way. But you still keep your anonymity.
That's the word I couldn't say earlier. Thank you.
Okay. So with that being said, we're going to look at moving forward. I'll get that stuff to Rachel and have her convert and put stuff up and just notify us whenever she can with those documents. The attorney opinion, we're going to go back to this whole thing about being on the deed and a name being on the deed.
On the deed. Okay.
Yes. If you want to be a candidate, you have to be on the deed.
Is this a new attorney opinion or an older one?
It's the older one, but it doesn't answer a further question that I have. I had a discussion about a proper name. And I'm concerned because in going back and researching this question I was asked, I have some questions. And I would like to ask the attorney. I have a document made up that I will send to all of you that I would just, if you don't understand it, that's fine. I can't mention names and I don't want to. I just have some real concerns about a past practice from a prior year election. And also, if you have to be on the deed and the only way you can apply to be a candidate, you must use that name that's on the deed, then that's who you should be.
You mean on the ballot?
On the ballot, or if you're elected to the board, whatever. But yeah. Go ahead, Lori.
So if you're on a deed and you have a name change, I mean, you have to go through district court to get the name change. So I can see where somebody takes title of a piece of property, and then maybe finds out down the line that in their hereditary line that they found out that their, last name was spelled differently.
Mhm.
And you see that a lot, way back in the, immigration days when they came across on the boat, the family name used to be spelled one way, and then the Americanized version was a different way. And so people will go in, they've already taken title of the house a certain way. And then they, like years later, they go in and have their name changed through district court. It's rare, but it does happen. Just so I can see where your legal name is one way, but on your legal document to your house, it's a different way. I mean, it's just, they would have to fill out a quitclaim deed, do a mere change of identity. It's an easy process. It's fairly reasonably, monetary wise, okay, you know, but I can see where somebody has a name on their property, on their deed, and then years later has a name change. And that is just kind of like a generalization, but that's where you might have a candidate who applies and they're using their new last name, but on the deed to the property, it was the prior one. So they shouldn't be disqualified just because of that. But maybe be made aware that in order for the application to be processed within a certain amount of time or by the end of deadline, they need to go in and do this update on their
A
deed.
quick claim. For instance, when my daughter and son-in-law got their house here in the valley, they weren't married. And Megan has never bothered to change her last name in the county records and stuff. But if she would decide she wanted to run for the board here, I couldn't say that I could say that it's weird because I can say that I identify her because that's the way she is in our master list and also in the county. But there's some instances where that's not the case. And I'm just saying, I can't run for office as a candidate as Linda Bradley and then say, oh, by the way, if I'm elected, I want to be Bugs Bunny.
Have you read the candidate list of people who run for governor of the state?
Oh my
You've
gosh.
got
Yeah. Oh,
good time or
frightening.
good space guy, and you have the least 10 people with totally ridiculous names.
Yeah, I
that you
know.
know.
Go
Aren't
ahead.
they?
Steve's laughing.
So, I mean, I know you can't give names, and I don't want to ask for names.
Yes.
But can you give like an example? Like, make up a name. Like just like I'm trying to understand the need behind this, because like in the situation like Lori pointed forth, if you are, like when my wife and I got married, if you change your name on the marriage license, that becomes your new legal name, and that's official documentation. And you can use that to get things anywhere. So, I mean, if there's an official government issued document that has their name on it, I mean, would that be something we could consider accepting?
How do I say this? What I've run across is the deed and our master list have a different last name. Still existing.
Totally different or slightly different?
Slightly different last name.
So, like, it went from like Smith to Plumber?
Yes. And somebody could have gotten married. It's just, you would think if somebody had property in their name and they were married or whatever, that you'd change that because like you say, you're married, you're using your new married name. And, it just, I don't know how you even begin to vet someone if their name isn't the same as it is in our master list or on the deed.
Can we have a paper trail? So like my last name is my maiden name is Ross. So had I bought this house under my maiden name, I'd be Lori Ross, but then I'm running for office and I'm now Lori Sampson, but I have that legal document that shows, hi, Lori Ross shall now be known as Lori Sampson. I mean, when you're vetting, if you have a paper trail of how that last name became the way it is, where's the problem?
There isn't if there's the paper trail. I have no problem with that. You just have to, as they say, show me the money. It's just, in a couple of instances, it's come up and it probably wouldn't have made any difference to me other than when I was asked the question, it was like this person made reference to a prior election. And I went, I wasn't on the committee then. I don't know how this happened. And that's what sent me down the rabbit hole I'm in, that even with the opinion that we got from the attorney way back when there were two people that were not on their deeds, and actually when they submitted their applications, and we probably don't have them in the office anymore, they had the quitclaim deed that showed them being accepted onto their deeds, both people.
And
That
I mean,
was a case of people who absolutely weren't on the deed, though, in any name. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's then this new name thing. I mean, people get divorced.
Yes.
They drop their ex's name and go back to their maiden name because they don't want to be reminded, maybe. I don't know.
hear what you're
But
saying, but a lot of times,
names.
but a lot of times then, let's say they keep the property or whatever, then they do the whole quitclaim, do the name change, and then it's the way it's supposed to be.
so I guess maybe what I'd want to try and see if we can get from the opinion, if we're going to the attorney with a new opinion, either A, going with the quitclaim route, which is going to cost some money, or B, if they already have the name change documentation showing this is my name, this was my name, this is my new name,
Yep.
is that an acceptable paper trail?
Like a marriage license or something, like I have no trouble with that. You know, we have, how do I say this? There have been times, and you'll see this when we vet this time, that there are sometimes questions about somebody's name that's on the property. Sometimes and many times, it's a female who now has a married name and who then signs her married name. And a lot of times, if you go and look and talk to Gil for clarification, he will say, yeah, XYZ. And that's like, no problem. You know?
So is this something where we also wanted to like update the election document?
No, because it says that your name should be on the deed. We have the attorney's opinion about that. We're going to add it to the application process. And I'm not sure if it's in the manual or not. I think it's in the manual somewhere, I want to say, but I wouldn't, without digging, and I don't want to dig.
Yeah, 4.1.8, each candidate must be listed on the property deed, must be a member in good standing as of the date of the application and remain so.
Yeah, and I just would like to add that to like Nancy says, to the application, just to make it real clear to everybody. But I'll send that because, like I say, I wouldn't care if I had gotten to the whole point of one place or the other, it says one or the other, but in both instances, it's a different name. And for that reason, I just would like the clarification.
Linda, I just think this is a lot of effort and money spent on attorneys for something that really, we're not talking fraud here. I mean,
No, absolutely not.
Anybody.
And if you don't want, I just would
impersonating someone, good time guy or whoever that character is who keeps running for governor of Washington. Someday I'm going to vote for him. Just for the heck of it.
Just for the heck of it, huh?
Yeah, but
it's just, I guess
it's such a minor thing that as long as we have some sort of column in your spreadsheet that says AKA and then the other name,
but if it's not on the deed,
Well, no, the first name is on the original name's on the deed. And then you can have someone else who's gone back and taken their maiden name as the other AKA. That's good enough. Take their word for it. Unless you suspect fraud, and I don't see any history of fraud here.
No. Like I say, it has to do with the whole proper name thing. Go ahead, Lori.
If we're vetting them and maybe we ask, okay, your name is different than your deed, and put it, like Nancy said, as an AKA. We vetted them. What's the big deal?
I mean, I could see the big deal there being if we don't actually have it documented anywhere, like in the elections manual, that, you know, we need to vet that they're on the deed. If the name change is different, we need to see a paper trail.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
and how they're listed in our owner's manual, our master list of owners. That's all I'm concerned about. I just don't, you know, like I say, I went down this rabbit hole, and until I was kind of forced to go down this rabbit hole, the rabbit hole didn't even exist.
those are always the fun ones.
This is such a, I mean, how many times has this come up? I mean, are we spinning our wheels over something that's
And I don't know
Sigma
here's
event?
my question, Nancy. I don't know if I am or I'm not. And if it wasn't for a prior election, I would say we're not spinning our wheels, because you just simply stick with, it has to be on the deed and it has to be in our owners list that way.
Well, it has to be on the deed, and it doesn't say it means that person has to be on the deed. It doesn't mean the exact name is. If you've got a body that's on the deed and still living, it doesn't really matter if they've decided to go by another name.
But that's
what the attorney thing says. What you want is an additional step. You want a double list where you put it on the Sudden Valley list. And Sudden Valley, face it, if they're getting the money, they're happy.
But you need to know, and Rachel can tell you, when you vet a candidate, and right now we all know who we all are, but when you vet a candidate, the first step is to make sure that person's name is on our owner's list. And then you go back and take a look at the deed. I don't go to the deed first, but I always, because there have been things that have come up in the past. It's unfortunate.
So
I realize this may be me getting off topic, and I apologize if I'm derailing. Feel free to say, no, we're not going to talk about that. But what happens if the name isn't in the master list? What do we do at that point?
I'm going to make the first thing I will try and do is make a phone call and get this person, talk to this person and simply say, your name isn't on our master registration list. And by then I will probably have gone and looked at the auditor's website and see what that says too.
So if the master list is wrong.
No, because the master list is made up from the deed that is received by Sudden Valley from the owners. That's that $125 that you pay, that's called a transfer fee. Every time a lot changes ownership, that's updated in our records. And so that's always changed at that time.
So this is really about allowing Sudden Valley to collect another $125 for someone to state their name?
Not at all. Just for them to straighten it out. Like I say, if Megan wanted to run for office, she'd have to run as Megan Bradley, not as with her current maiden name, with her current married name, because she never bothered to change it. And that's the way her deed reads. That's all.
There's no, in Washington State, people get to put their nicknames on the ballot. If they want to be Harry, Skip, whatever, you know, they can put the
Okay,
name they
you know
want to be elected by.
I'll go take a look at that, because since you brought that up, state law.
I mean, you don't have to use the name on your birth certificate or your driver's license or whatever. Otherwise, good times, guy.
Then I could be Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
You could.
Linda, your daughter could run as Megan Bradley and whatever her last name is and have.
Yeah, hyphenated. Yeah, she could get away with that. That's true. It's just, I'll go take a look at that, Nancy. Thank you for thinking of that. I will go down that rabbit hole next.
Megan jumps all over me with her hyphenated name.
But I will. So the other thing that I have to ask of you all is we have this draft candidate application documents. Our next meeting is scheduled to be on June 28th. And I wonder if we want to meet earlier than that to make some finalizations on this document, because after we get, I've lost it now and I'm in trouble, because we have to have printed out and a document ready to rock and roll by the 6th of July, which basically gives us a week. Are we okay with that? That we're going to be able to just make the few changes we have to make and move forward?
I mean, we're talking about such minor changes, the time, and there was something else.
Adding the thing about your name on the deed. Oh, and candidate withdrawal, but I have that now. It's just right now I left it blank in there because I think it had a different time frame in there. Go ahead, Steve.
So I don't want to make everyone come to an extra meeting, but I have a small problem. I'm going to be on a plane during our next meeting. So I won't be able to attend. So if you guys are wanting me to update that Google Doc, I would need to do it before, which I'm happy to do. But at the same time, like, I don't want to make everybody meet just because I won't be in attendance next session.
So
Well, it's- Move the date.
Up to the 21st.
our next meeting should be, if it's in June, should be on the 28th, I believe.
Why
Right.
don't we move it to the 21st?
Is that agreeable to everybody? If I can get that scheduled with Rachel, that we just move it up a week?
Because in addition, we have a holiday in between that time and the time we have to submit.
Yeah, we've got the long July holiday, and then by the time when everybody comes back to work on that Tuesday, in theory, there's going to be a posting that'll go on the 2021 AGM page on the website, and there'll be a notice about here's the application, and then staff will print out. Usually I have them print out about 10 of them to put out at the pamphlet file. And that all kind of has to be ready to go and for them to put out. And it's nice if they can, instead of waiting till the last minute, they'd have some of that time of, here, we got this from N&E, in your spare time, make up 10 copies because they've got to go out first thing on the 6th of July.
So the 21st.
Okay, that works for me.
All right.
Does it work for Steve?
He
good.
said yes.
Okay.
Do we need to check
Lori
with John
said
also?
yes. Rachel said yes. Rachel, are there any other committee meetings that are on a weird Monday that's not when we're normally, I know normally we're the fourth Monday. Is there any other committee? Do you know if
I don't see any on my calendar, but I can ask John because he can look in Zoom and see. I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, there you
I don't believe Mondays are usually a problem.
Okay.
Yep.
Then we're gonna switch, but I'll send that through Rachel and Glenn and get you to change that then. I would hate to see us run up against it. There's nothing worse than being at the, at the very tail end of something and then go, whoops. And it also is easier for staff if they've got time to work. Well, seeing as how we've made it through our meeting, we've decided when our next meeting is. We've conducted all our business. I would like a motion to adjourn at, looks like 8:12.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
My understanding on the attorney opinion is that's on hold while you check.
Yes. And I'm gonna check what you said
Okay.
about state law. Because then I don't, no biggie.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay, because I wrote that on there and I have arrows. I do the horriblest thing to my agenda.
Okay.
I just want to let you guys know I'm going on vacation the 4th through the 12th, so I won't be reachable. So if you need me in that
The 4th
time and I don't answer, that's why.
Of June,
Yes.
I'll get you those documents. Tomorrow's Tuesday. I'll get those to you and I'll copy Glenn. And then you can, and once you get them into a Google Doc for all those things, we can just work on what we need to work on. And we won't need you here.
Okay,
Have
perfect.
fun.
Yeah.
Thank
And you
you.
need the bylaw amendment stuff from me.
Yes, Nancy, as soon as you get that in a Word document, then I'll try and you'll have it before the end of the week. I promise you that, Rachel. I know Nancy's got a life. I got a life.
No, I'll do it tonight. I've got it.
No.
All I have to do is mail it. It's just not on this computer, so I can't do it right
I see
now.
what you're saying. Yeah, I know. That's why I sent you all a zip file instead so that I could send stuff in Word so it was editable. Okay, that works for me just fine then. I will have something to you tomorrow, Rachel. Okay.
Perfect.
In closing quick, the board approved the Unilec contract. I don't know if Glenn has signed it yet.
I can check tomorrow on that.
Okay.
Yeah, they
Because
did it.
I'd like to send it back and get them nailed down. We went through
Yeah.
it last year.
Okay, I'll check. I'll actually send him an email right now so that do you want me to send it to you or would you like me to send it to Catherine and you?
Just send it to Catherine and copy me, please, like you have in the past. Michael, do you need something?
I have just one question. With June 1st, the governor's supposed to let us all back to normalcy.
Yes.
I heard. Are we going to start having live board meetings?
No one has discussed that yet. And I don't know if it's even a top. I know it's not a topic at our next meeting, but I certainly could. Ooh, that's going to be interesting. Maybe we could bring it up and discuss it if I just ask if we can add it as a discussion item at our next meeting.
I mean, if we're going to go
Board
back to
hasn't
normal, let's
discussed
go back
any
to
of
normal.
that.
I am sick of Zoom.
I know.
out.
I don't know where they're going to have room for us in the community center with all of the expansion they've done to expand things out so they can have people in the gym. Cause like the
Upstairs.
multi-purpose room has got equipment in it. I don't think the little room where we used to meet has, but I don't know what they've done with it.
Well,
I
I mean,
only
just
saw it
the
on
board,
two.
the board meets upstairs though.
Yep,
We have our board meetings upstairs. There's room for
tons of people.
enough.
Also, I mean, if we are going back to normal on June 1st, wouldn't all the gym equipment go back into where it usually was? And that room should be freed up, right?
That's what
One
I
would
was
hope
told.
so. Yeah,
I was talking with, what's her name? Andrea,
Yeah,
and about using a room for a meeting that we have. And right now we were meeting in the foyer, but
yeah.
we've gone to the pavilion out at the marina because it's nice out. But if we had to go back inside, she said they were going to eventually move everything back into the gym and open that room, whatever it's called, up. So,
the multi-purpose room.
yeah.
Well, there's two multi-purpose rooms. There's the big one that they have the finance, and then there's a little one we used to have N&E meetings in that's across from that game room that's got the foosball and stuff in it.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
PR2.
And then
You
there is the
could
room
use
in the
either.
library we could use too.
Just to
We'll
chime
see
in
what
here,
we
that
see.
there's also a room over by the library.
Yeah, that's what I say. There is a room off the library that we could use too.
Well,
You just have to
true.
reserve it with Andrea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll see if I can woohoo, add discussion about June 1st and opening up. You're right. The board hasn't discussed it at all. And it's something worth having. John's going, it can't come soon enough. Okay.
Actually, Zoom makes a lot of things pretty easy for me. So
Yeah, rather than sitting up all the microphones in the barn, right, John? Mhm.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about that. Well, we'll see what they say, because maybe they'll just leave it up to each committee and we can decide what we want to do then, and we can do that by email. So I'm going to try this again. If we've conducted all our business at 8:19, I vote that we adjourn. Everybody in agreement?